Hello again, this is Preheat. Welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Devastation Evoker in patch 12.1. So Devastation Evoker is a spec that I think, because not a lot of people are playing it, it's a bit overlooked. And I've been looking at a bunch of the tier lists and seeing where people are ranking it, and I think this spec is much better than people are accounting for, especially in the raid setting. I think Devastation will be quite good in all of these spread cleave fights that this raid has to offer. This video is going to include everything you need to know, so that's going to be stuff like your gear, your trinkets, your stats, the rotation, what has changed in the patch, how the tier bonus works, and really everything to get started. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to begin here by showing the opener. I like to do this at the start of the video just to give you an idea on how the spec plays and what you're getting into. So before the pull, and this is assuming a raid scenario, we're going to be pre-casting a Living Flame. You can also use hover during this cast. I recommend that you use both hovers. You're able to get them back with your deep breaths. So you might as well just put it on cooldown. That way, whenever you get a charge back from deep breath, it doesn't go to waste. That's a Scalecommander thing. So we're going to be pre-casting Living Flame, and then we're going to be using our deep breath right away. Now, whenever you're using deep breath, you kind of have two goals. The first goal is to hit everything with it that's feasible to hit. The second goal is to travel the minimum distance. So you can see here, I'm curving, and I exit my deep breath right here. This is another thing. I'll have the macro in the description below, but the idea with all of your other abilities, everything other than deep breath, is you likely want to add a cancel or a deep breath to them. That way, any other ability you press will cancel that deep breath faster than if you would have pressed the button a second time. It's just better that way. So this right here is where we would use our potion. With trinkets, you probably want to save them for your Rising Fury buff, which is going to be increasing over time. Once you're at 4 stacks, you're safe to use trinkets like that. But it depends on the trinket. Some trinkets you're going to use right away. For instance, the new Spymaster trinket, you probably want to use this as soon as you hit your 5 stacks, regardless of that. But anyways, we use Dragonrage here to exit Deep Breath. All of these targets have been hit by Deep Breath. And now we're going to be hitting Tip the Scales into Eternity Surge. And you can see my positioning here. Be very aware of your positioning whenever you're playing Devastation. I want to hit all the targets available with the Fire Breath if possible, right? So that's why I kind of curved the Deep Breath, so I'd hit everything, and then I'm in a spot where I can Fire Breath and hit everything. This is a big part of your damage as Devastation, is just having proper positioning. It should be fairly easy to you because you only have to stand still for your Empower spells because of hover. Now, of course, since we've used our Deep Breath, we did get a hover charge back. And then Fire Breath. So now we're going to have 2 stacks of Mass Disintegrate, and we're going to our cooldowns. You're not going to worry about getting Essence Burst here because your Essence is already filled up. We need to just get that bar moving. So we're going to move on to Mass Disintegrate. Now, just a quick note about Mass Disintegrate. Whenever you're Mass Disintegrating and then you try to use another Mass Disintegrate before the current one has finished, as long as it's after this penultimate tick, that is called chaining. You're not losing a tick, you're just moving that tick into the next one. That is okay, as long as it's Mass Disintegrate to Mass Disintegrate. If you're doing Mass Disintegrate into Normal Disintegrate, don't do that. If you're doing Normal Disintegrate to Disintegrate, that's also fine. Basically, the idea is if you're using Mass Disintegrate, you want to finish it unless you're using another one afterwards. So here's 2 in a row, so we can chain this. See me pressing it again before the spell ends, and then I'm going to let this Disintegrate fully finish before I do anything else. Moving on from there, I usually like to use up my Leaping Flame and Burnout proc. They're guaranteed on the pull because of Scalecommander. The Leaping Flames comes from the Fire Breath. The Burnout is guaranteed proc, and then later it's a proc from Fire Breath. Basically, the idea is you have an instant cast Living Flame. It's going to hit more than one target, and as you can see, I got 2 Essence Bursts from that. The idea is try to spend this before your next Fire Breath if possible. There's obviously exceptions to this, but you want to try and use it if possible. And then you're just moving on to spending your Essence. And we're going to be wrapping this up soon because we're almost at the point where you kind of go into autopilot. But just one last thing. You are delaying your second Dragonrage in single target. Even in like cleave scenarios, you want to delay it because you're casting Disintegrate. Disintegrate takes longer to use your Essence. Therefore, the Imminent Destruction buffs are going to take longer to spend. If you use Deep Breath right away, back to back, these Imminent Destruction buffs, they're going to expire. You're going to lose a good portion of them. So you actually want to milk the Strafing Run buff until the very last second. And you can see here I go for the Eternity Surge, and then right before it ends, I press Deep Breath, and then I cleave the adds there, and then exit my Deep Breath, and then just move on. The rotation is very simple. We're not going to get into it right here, but essentially the idea is you're just playing whack-a-mole, right? You're just pressing your cooldowns on cooldown. The only exception to this really is your Deep Breath. You're holding that second one. Always use the first one on cooldown. Use the Empowers on cooldown. Spend your Essence and build Essence. All right, let's move on. So you probably noticed this video is a bit shorter than my usual guides, and that's because not a whole lot has changed for Devastation when it comes to the actual rotation and gameplay. Most of the changes are in other things, and they are important to note, but we're going to cover them right now. Wing Leader has been changed. Instead of giving cooldown reduction through the bombardment procs, you're getting them just through the Mass Disintegrate, so you don't have to worry about spreading your bombardments. We also have a new ability called Unbound Flame. How this ability works is you get it after Dragonrage, you get 4 charges, and whenever you press it, you get an Essence Burst. It also does big damage, and it always crits. We're going to be primarily using this as a way to guaranteed get an Essence Burst whenever we need it for our Mass Disintegrate. That way we can stack up that nice 15% buff through Titanic Wrath. But we also will be using it just to get Essence Burst, anytime our Essence Bar isn't filled and we have it available. We also have a new tier bonus for Devastation in patch 12.1. This is going to be buffing our Shattering Stars and giving us cooldown reduction on our Causality. We also get a slight increase to the damage of Eternity Surge. The idea with this is your Shattering Stars are going to be doing more damage because they're being cast as if they're maximum rank. But keep in mind, they are taking the Scintillation tax. Scintillation is only 40% effective on its procs. So whenever you get these procs, even though they are max rank in damage and increased damage through the tier bonus, they are going to only do 40% of damage that they normally would. However, there was a recent bug fix so that now they do benefit from Mastery. The talents are going to be very similar to what you're used to. This is the raid setup that I'm recommending. As you can see here, the biggest change is that we're taking Diverted Power here instead of Extended Battle. That's because we don't care about the Wing Leader procs from Bombardment anymore, since those aren't a thing. And then also over here on the side, we do have Event Horizon. This sounds actually very, very similar to Eye of Infinity for single target. But in AOE, it's going to be doing more, and it's close enough where I think it's just better to always go Event Horizon. There's no single target bosses in the raid. When it comes to a Mythic Plus build, we're looking at something like this with the Volatility talent. Although there is a little change you can make here. You can remove the Fire Breath talent here, and you can put it over into Charge Blast for just a little bit more AOE. But otherwise, this is essentially the same thing. We're not going to be talking about Flame Shaper today because Scalecommander, in my opinion, is just better in pretty much every way. So this is focusing on Scalecommander. But keep in mind, these talent builds are going to be on Wowhead. You can always check them, and they will be more up to date than this video because if anything changes, I'll just update the Wowhead guide and you can find it there. When it comes to your best stats, you want Critical Strike before everything else, but a nice healthy mix of Critical Strike, Haste, and Mastery is good. So I'd recommend trying to pump as much Critical Strike as you can and then keep Haste and Mastery somewhat equal. But of course, always use raid bots and go off of the top gear results as your best setup, right? Because you're working off of what's in your bags. You don't have access to everything. When it comes to trinkets, using proc trinkets are going to be your best bet. You don't necessarily have to use on use. In fact, the best trinkets right now aren't on use. But keep in mind, even though these are our best 2 trinkets right now, trinket tuning is happening right now. In fact, the Wowhead guide, this tier list, I'm going to have to update this already because they've done some tuning. So just keep your eyes peeled on this best in slot page on the trinket tier list if you're wanting to know the best up-to-date trinkets. That's always going to be more up-to-date than a YouTube video because I can't change the video once I post it, right? But I can change this. So just go here and check the link. It'll be in the description below. There are other notable items in the raid other than trinkets though. So we have a very, very strong weapon off the end boss. We also have this Venom Curse loot. So Venom Curse loot has a cantrip effect and it also has a weird stat allocation. This one is pure crit. This is a fantastic piece of loot for Devastation. Also bear in mind, with the new catalyst system, whenever you catalyze an item such as this, it will keep the effects and it will also keep the stats. So if I were to turn this into tier, it would literally be the exact same item. It would just also give me the tier bonus. We also have a neck that gives us a crit proc as well. Fantastic. It also has 2 slots. And really, the end boss just has some really banger loot for Devastation. So if you are looking for a recommendation on where to spend your bonus rolls, then the end boss on Heroic is probably the best thing to do. But keep in mind, if you spec into Preservation here as your loot spec instead of Devastation, it does actually get rid of this trinket, which is a landmine. We don't want to hit that. So make sure that you spec into Preservation if you're going to be bonus looting this boss here, okay? Obviously, that's not for everyone, though. Some people are going to want the absolute best piece, and I recommend, if you really care about this a lot, probably just run a Draw Optimizer sim on the bonus roll, and then look at what's going to be the most effective upgrade, because the math could math out differently for you. For me, though, I will most likely be coining this boss, because I want to get to this dagger as soon as possible. I want to get this neck. I don't even have to upgrade this neck for it to be good. It's just fantastic loot. When it comes to your embellishments, you're going to use an offhand, and I don't actually have the right embellishment on this because I can't get it on the PTR, but the best embellishment is going to be the Ritual Stone. It's a blacksmithing item. Put it on your offhand, and then put your Arcana Weave somewhere on your gear. Elsewhere, probably on your cloak, right? Cloak, belt, bracer, these are going to be good pieces for later on. Initially, you might just want to go for the biggest upgrade that's a non-tier piece. There's also a world where this Tuesday you craft a staff, because we are getting the 4th spark due to a bug, and they're going to be giving everyone extra spark. So that might actually be a good option for you, especially if you do not plan to raid at all. Also, if you just get unlucky in the raid or you want to spend your bonus coin elsewhere, A staff craft can be good. Just keep in mind though, good things come to those who wait. If you craft a staff and then you get another weapon in your vault, or your raid has an extra dagger by some miracle, or you bonus roll the dagger because you're bonus rolling the last boss anyways, these can all be very, very bad for your character because they're essentially deleting loot from your guys. So yeah, just be careful with your crafting. Again, just wait and see what you're going to get, right? If you wait, you're going to have the best odds of having an item that isn't going to be replaced or having another item get wasted because of that. But obviously your guild might have plans for you as well that you're just following. All right, so let's talk a little bit more in depth about the rotation. So again, on the opener, you want to be using hover during your Living Flame precast. This is because you're going to get a hover charge back anyways through the Scalecommander talent. So you might as well do that. Deep Breath resets your hover charge. And then as this is finishing, you're going to use Deep Breath and you want to hit everything with it and go to minimum distance. Use your macros that cancel Deep Breath, like for instance on Dragonrage, and have a good position coming out of it. This is where you trinket, potion, but the trinket could also be delayed for the 4 stack of Rising Fury if you're using unused trinket. That makes sense if it's a shorter trinket. This is because you get a stacking buff during your Dragonrage. But anyways, after this, tip the scales Eternity Surge into Fire Breath, rank 1. I'm going to segue here because there is something to talk about when it comes to your ranking. So you'll see in Sims that in AOE, a lot of these Sims are actually up-ranking Eternity Surge based on the target count. I just want to show you something to kind of give you an idea of like why that actually doesn't really matter. So this is 3 targets. This is just still using rank 1 versus the default sim logic. Here we have at 4 targets, you can see up-ranking it to rank 2 and 4 targets is actually a 0.8% gain. So that's it is actually a gain there. But when we go to basically every other target count other than 4, you're going to see it's either neutral or worse. So here's 5 targets, it's neutral. Here is 6 targets, it's slightly, well, it's neutral. And then here, 7 targets, neutral, 8 targets. It is actually worse to do it on 8 targets. Here we have 9 targets, same, 10. Okay, you get the idea. In my mind, it is so much easier and simpler to just always rank 1 Eternity Surge. As you can see here, up ranking it doesn't really have a big benefit. In fact, in most cases, there's absolutely no benefit, okay? So if you want the absolute best damage, then do a rank 2 if you have 4 targets. But other than that, just always send Eternity Surge at rank 1. Fire Breath, just always do it at rank 1. Going back to the video though, we do our Deep Breath, and then we do our Dragonrage, tip the skills, Eternity Surge into Fire Breath rank 1. And then here we're going to be using Mass Disintegrate. Again, when it comes to Disintegrate, whenever you are channeling Disintegrate, if you press another Disintegrate before the end of it, but like after the penultimate tick, it will actually chain that Disintegrate into the next one. This is not something you want to do though if you're using a Mass Disintegrate into a normal Disintegrate, right? Mass to Mass is okay, normal to normal is okay. Never chain a Mass into a normal. So as you can see here, I'm just doing 2 Mass Disintegrates, let that one finish. And I use my Living Flame because I want to get that Leaping Flame buff used. You always get Leaping Flame from your Fire Breath. You're guaranteed to get a Burnout proc, which makes your Living Flame instant from your combat, just having Scalecommander, right? So having those 2 is going to be the condition to use that Living Flame. And I like to do that just to clear it up because that way, whenever I get a new one for the next Fire Breath, I'm not overriding my old buff, right? So just channel Disintegrate if you have the essence, but keep your eye on the Strafing Run buff. We need to use this before it expires, okay? So keep in mind, right here, Imminent Destruction. You can see it has 16 seconds left on it. I have 2 charges, right? Okay, so right here, I'm going to use my second Deep Breath, and you can see it refreshes it. Now we're at 6. You can hold 8, but this only lasts 30 seconds. Disintegrate takes a very long time to burn through the Imminent Destruction stacks. So if you're using Disintegrate as your main spender, you need to make sure that you stagger your Deep Breaths. In AOE, this is not an issue. In AOE, Pyre is a much, much faster essence spender, so you'll burn through that Imminent Destruction in 30 seconds, no problem, right? All 8 stacks. But again, in single targeting cleave, don't do that. Just delay that Deep Breath. That's why we do that. And then essentially the idea is we're just trying to use our empowers on cooldown. You're playing whack-a-mole with these 2, and you're spending Disintegrate otherwise, and you're building whenever it makes sense to. And again, whenever you have the Leaping Flame and the Burnout proc there, you know, you have this Leaping Flame right here. This is going to give you 2 Essence Bursts on your next Living Flame. You want to be using this up before your next Fire Breath, although sometimes you won't be able to. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But yeah, also notice how this Fire Breath I just did, it's only hitting 2 of the targets. Ideally, whenever you're pressing Fire Breath, you're hitting every target, right? So it'd be better to do it from like this corner or this corner. But obviously, in a raid scenario, it's pretty uncommon for the bosses to line up in a line like this the whole fight, right? Okay, so let's pause here for a second and talk about what's happening. So as Dragonrage is ending, we will get a new ability. Boom. See it? Unbound Flame. Okay, So the idea with this ability is we are using it whenever we have Mass Disintegrate, we don't have an Essence Burst, and our Essence bar is able to be moving. It isn't filled. Okay, so right here, if I use the... Actually, it's coming up right here. So here's our Deep Breaths. You can see I'm still sitting on the Unbound Flame stacks. Once I use the Eternity Surge, though, I use one right here. See, we're at 3 stacks now. That's because I want to have the Essence Burst for this Mass Disintegrate, so I can use it there. And then afterwards, you know, we're sitting on the Strafing Run, right? But afterwards, we're going to be using this Fire Breath, hitting all the targets there. And then I'm going to use another one here to get the Essence Burst. Boom. And then we can spend again. Okay. Now, remember when I said there might be cases where you may not use your Leaping Flames with Burnout? This is probably the most common time that's going to happen, because whenever you have the Unbound Flame, that's just a very easy way to get the Essence Burst, okay? So you might skip a Leaping Flame Burnout proc, you know, combo on the Living Flame on your Fire Breath if you have this, okay? That's kind of normal. But anyways, use the Strafing Run before it ends. Make sure you always do that. Do not let the Strafing Run expire. And then again, we have Eternity Surge ready, so we're going to use that. We're going to use the Unbound Flame to get the Essence Burst for it, and then spend, and then same idea with Fire Breath. I'm trying to angle it here. See that? So now we fill all the targets, and then we can Unbound Flame and use our Essence Burst. And at this point, like, our cooldowns have officially ended, because our Dragonrage, although it is like a long cooldown, it's actually kind of like somewhat pseudo extended by having the Unbound Flames afterwards. Technically, we're not in cooldowns there, but it's like a carryover, okay? You should always use all your Unbound Flames before the next Dragonrage. And then whenever Dragonrage is coming up, you're just going to be playing the same way that you were playing before. There's no like holding anything unless there's like a specific reason to, you know, when it comes to like your empowers and stuff like that. Just like send everything on cooldown. The first Deep Breath, whenever it comes up, use that right away. You can hold the Strafing Run one, and then use your empowers on cooldown. Don't try to hold those for Dragonrage. If there is a situation where your empowers are like 2 or 3 seconds from coming off cooldown and Dragonrage comes up, as long as it doesn't cost you a Dragonrage throughout the fight, you can hold that Dragonrage just a little bit extra just to have them. But keep in mind, whenever you press Dragonrage, you are going to automatically get cooldown reduction on your Empower spells, as long as there's, you know, a couple targets there, because Dragonrage fires 3 pyres. Those 3 pyres all benefit from causality, meaning that they all give you cooldown reduction. That means if there's a bunch of targets stacked, right? Every pyre could give you 2.5 cooldown reduction, and there's going to be 3 of those. So, you know, you're getting like around 7.5 seconds of cooldown reduction. So again, if the Empower has, you know, 8 seconds left on the cooldown, by the time the GCD ends, you're going to be able to use those Empowers even though they were on cooldown. Just something to keep in mind. Okay, so here our Deep Breath is coming off cooldown, so we're going to use that. And always be casting, guys. Always try to fill all your time with casting. You saw that when my Deep Breath came up right as I was casting Living Flame, and that's fine. I just want to fill all the available time in combat with abilities. You have Hover, make use of that. Make sure that you are always casting while moving. Try to keep your Hover stacks from capping. If you're going to be using a Deep Breath, just always hover right before it. Okay, that's the easiest way to keep it from capping out. So yeah, you're just going to essentially continue playing this way until your next Dragonrage comes up, and then you're just going to go into your priority again. If you have questions about the rotation, the priority can always be found on my Wowhead guide if you just click over here. So essentially the idea is we're just going from top to bottom every time we choose our next action. As you can see here, top priority is just using Deep Breath. Just try to stagger it with your Strafing Run and single target and cleave. Dragonrage, tip the scales, Eternity Surge, Fire Breath. Try not to tip the scales on Fire Breath. So if you have your Dragonrage come up and then let's say Eternity Surge isn't ready but Fire Breath is, you would use a rank 1 Fire Breath and then tip the scales the Eternity Surge whenever it comes back up. And then outside of Dragonrage, whenever we have our Mass Disintegrate and we don't have Essence Burst, we don't have our Essence capped, we can use Unbound Flame to get that Essence Burst for the Mass Disintegrate. Otherwise, we're just spending our Essence and Essence Burst on Disintegrate, spending on normal to Disintegrate, so Mass and normal here. And then we're using Living Flame with Leaping Flames and Burnout. If we have this combo, these two, we use Living Flame above Unbound Flame. That's assuming that we don't have the Mass Disintegrate buff, right? But, you know, Unbound Flame here, if we're lacking Essence Burst, is going to be used. And these little tooltips, they have additional information for you. And then Living Flame is your filler. You can also find more tips down here. And this is where you can get the macro for how to put Cancel or Deep Breath into all your abilities. But that is pretty much it for single target. Not much really changed in AOE other than the fact that you're going to be using Pyre at 3 targets. You'll still be using Mass Disintegrate. So if you're ever in an AOE scenario and there's a bunch of targets, you still Mass Disintegrate. All right, folks, don't stop using that ability. And that is why we get bonus value out of Charge Blast, because if we use Mass Disintegrate, this is going to cap out our Charge Blast. So it makes that Pyre hit harder, right? And if you want to know how that rotation changes, just click the Charge Blast button. right there. And that's going to say if you're capped on Charge Blast, basically 18 or more stacks. You're going to use Pyre above Mass Disintegrate. Otherwise, you're going to be Mass Disintegrate. A common thing I see with people, a problem in AoE that they do is they will hold their Empowers because they want to use this Pyre, because they think like somehow it's going to mess up their Mass Disintegrate. You can hold 2 of these, right? So whenever you're going to be using your Empower spells, or whenever you have a capped Charge Blast, do not hold off on using your Empowers. Just use them right away. Hold on to that Mass Disintegrate buff, throw out the Pyre, do a Mass Disintegrate, throw out the Pyre, do the Mass Disintegrate, throw out the Pyre, go back to your normal rotation. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Again, if you have any questions about this, feel free to leave them in the comments. Wowhead guide will be up to date, so you can always check it there. Everything you need to know is here. This is mostly a guide aimed towards raid, but you can take the same logic to Mythic Plus. Just remember that things are changing. In AoE, you're going to be pyring at 3. With the build, you're also going to be just ripping those deep breaths back to back. That's totally fine. And then if you're running Charge Blast, just make sure you pyre at 18 or more stacks of Charge Blast above the Mass Disintegrate. But do not delay your Empower spells. Very, very important. Otherwise, plays the same. All right, and that is going to be it for today. So keep in mind the most up-to-date information is always going to be in the Wowhead guide, since I can't really change this video once it goes live. Let me know, by the way, in the comments if you like this short form version of guides better than my normal format. And of course, as always, if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. And hopefully I see you in the next one.